the announcement to make on the project winners. We had 77 photos.
It's a lot.
28 members submitted photos. 29 if you count Colin, but he was late because he had computer and email problems. But so they're not included in the vote, but you will see pictures from Colin on the gallery when I update it tomorrow. But that wasn't part of the vote. And 30 votes were cast in all by 30 different members. So that's great news. At the end, I'm going to ask you to use the chat facility to chat your name. Don't bother to do it now. It'd be good to have it right at the end because it'd be easier if it's all in one bunch so that I don't have to sort through it all. That's the only serious way I can find to get an attendee list from this system. The only other way is to get you to register for the event, and then that becomes a little bit tedious and you know, too much information. So
Take
I thought
a screenshot of the gallery, Ray, and you've got us all looking at you.
Well, I could screen grab the gallery, that's true.
Or even
actually,
with your mobile phone, you could just take a quick shot of us.
Yeah, I can actually screen grab the grid view of the video session, but it's just so much easier to have it in text form in the chat window. So we'll go for that next time. Okay, so the last few weeks we've sort of turned this into a little bit of a tutorial on Lightroom and a few other bits and bobs. So I thought I'd continue that trend until you shout at me and tell me to stop. So I thought I would continue. And I had a few requests in from a couple of you to say, can you go through the library function of Lightroom? So I thought today I would do that, and I'll just take you through some of the things that I use within Lightroom and particular features that I think are quite handy and useful, some of which I did cover a couple of weeks ago when someone asked the question, but I thought I'd go over it again in a little bit more of a structured way. And if it's not your cup of tea, I apologise, but then, you know, come back and say what is your cup of tea, and we'll do that next time.
Earl Grey.
Hmm?
Earl Grey.
Oh, great. Fair enough.
Lady Grey.
Thanks for your contribution, Pete. Okay, so I'm going to screen share my Lightroom. And you should be seeing that now. And it's a very busy screen. Don't get too intimidated by that for now. What I'm going to do is just take you through some of the basics of the layout. And if it's a bit too small on your screen, I apologise. I've not found a reliable way to zoom in. You can zoom in by magnifying the view, and you can do that on the zoom controls. You can actually expand it. The only downside to that is that when I switch to other things, it might be a little bit too big or a little bit too small. So as long as you're on the ball with zooming your view and that works for you, then that's fine. But otherwise, I can't do it reliably from here, which is a bit frustrating. So let me take you through some of these things. I will move the window left and right because that does appear to work at your end because sometimes the thumbnails on the side will get in the way. If they are, you can turn them off. At the top of the thumbnails, you'll see some icons. And if you look at the one on the left, which is a single underline, if you click that, all the videos will disappear if they're in the way of the menu system. So let's have a little look at what we've got on the screen here. So this is Lightroom, and across on the top right, you have got your workflow. So you've got the library function, which is what I'm going to concentrate on today. You've got the develop function, and last couple of weeks we've dipped in and out of that area there. There's a mapping function, which if you're into geotagging and your camera tracks GPS coordinates or your mobile phone, you can actually place, it will automatically put your photos on a map for you. You can create books, photo books, slideshows, print, and it will actually create web galleries for you as well. To be honest, I don't use all of those really. I really only use these two, the library and the develop function, in any great degree. And what I'll do is I'll take you through the library function of importing photos and using that process. Firstly, let's take a brief look on the left-hand side, and where you see the mouse circling. It's showing you the pictures folder, and inside the pictures folder I've got my photos, and then three more folders: bridges, food, and rust. If I go to the file system of the computer, so let me change the share to the file system of the computer, you'll now see that on the computer in the pictures folder, I've got my photos, and again, I've got bridges, food, and rust. So what that menu system is showing you in Lightroom is exactly the folder structure I've got on the computer. And that is a very important thing, because we mentioned it, I think, last week or the week before, where people were saying, well, where are my photos? One of the big advantages of Lightroom is the photos are where you want them to be. And if you want them to be on 3 different disk drives, you can have them on 3 different disk drives, but still only have one catalog to manage them from. And your catalog is over here on the left-hand side. So I can put the photos where I want to put them. And if that means I've got multiple drives for safety, or I've got multiple drives because I've filled up all the other drives, doesn't matter. You put them where you want them, but you manage them all from a single catalog, and they will appear here when you open different things. So I've got, for want of better categories, I've just set up a dummy catalog here with a few random pictures. So for now, my folders are bridges, food, and rust. You can choose whatever you want. It could be the date of the event that you went out. It could be the place where you went. I've got a mixture, and I'll show you that later. But for this particular exercise today, I've got bridges, food, and rust. So if I go into bridges, it will show me all the photos I have of bridges in that folder, 59 photos. And you see the thumbnails of those photos. Now, a lot of people wonder what's the difference between doing it this way and using something like Bridge with Photoshop or Organizer with Photoshop Elements. The difference is that Bridge and Organizer are file viewers. And what that means is that when you point the viewer at the folder with the photos, and the folder and the photos have to be there for you to see them. With Lightroom, it's slightly different. The catalog is stored somewhere, and that's different probably from where the photos are being stored. I said you can have photos in lots of different places. It all goes into a single catalog in one place, and that catalog has previews of the photos as well. So even if you've got photos on a drive and you haven't got the drive plugged into the computer, you can still open the Lightroom catalog. You can still search around and look for those photos that you're looking for. And even by looking at these menus on the left-hand side, you'll see there Macintosh HD. It's telling me that it's on the hard disk drive of this computer. So you can actually find the picture you want visually, and even if the drive isn't plugged in, it'll show you what drive it's on, so you know which one to go plug in, so you can then action the photo as well. You can't action it if the photo's not there, but at least you can see it and use it. So there is a fundamental difference between the way Lightroom indexes and catalogues photos to the way Bridge and Organizer work. They are file viewers, whereas this is a full-blown catalogue management system. So that's worth understanding. So I've got these thumbnails, and if I double click on one, it will expand to a full view. That's a nice convenient thing to do. If I come down to the bottom here, where the cursor is circling, I've got some other controls on how I view the pictures. If I click on the grid view, I go back to all the thumbnails. If I click on the XY view, I can see two pictures compared side by side. And that can be quite useful if you're trying to choose between, say, this one and this one. I can actually select them and decide which ones I'm going to choose. So I can keep one the same and just compare it with others until I find the one I want to do. So that can be quite useful. A different way of doing it is this view, which is a way of inspecting them all together. They call it a survey view. So if I select one picture, I see it. If I select 2, 3, 4, it shows you them all side by side, which can be another convenient way to sort through your photos. The last icon on here, I won't click on it for now because it can tie up the machine for a little while. You see a picture of a face there. The system has facial recognition. So if I haven't got any photos loaded with people in, so there's no point at the moment, but it would go off. You go set it off, go off and have a cup of tea, maybe 2 cups of tea. It will sort through your catalogue and it will find all the pictures of people. And if it recognizes them, it puts them all in one group. So all the pictures of Bob, Dick and Harry will be in different groupings. And you can say, right, all those pictures are Bob, so it will label all of them are Bob. All these pictures are Harriet, so it will label them all Harriet. So it's a very quick and easy way to label and categorize photos of people using facial recognition. Most software management systems now include some kind of facial management system, and Lightroom's no exception. Okay, so that's looking at the pictures. If we go over to the other side of the screen, we've got some stuff. So if I select one of these pictures just by single clicking it or double clicking it so I can see the whole thing, I can now change white balance. I can do some very simple adjustments. They call them quick develop adjustments. And these are what they say on the tin. You know, I can adjust exposure. The single arrow is 1/3 of a stop. And you see by hovering over it, it tells you. The double arrow is a whole stop. So I can increase or decrease by either 1/3 of a stop at a time or in whole stop increments, the exposure of the picture. So if I go up a stop there or down 1/3 of a stop, you can see the changes. Clarity adjustment, vibrance, all the same kind of thing. Now don't forget, this is not in develop. In develop, you've got all this and more. You've got lots of sliders. You can do all these adjustments by individual colors and channels and things like that. Much more sophisticated. This is just quick develop, a quick and dirty way of tweaking your pictures. To be honest, if you're getting the picture largely right in camera, that's all you need. I don't go into the big develop module and spend hours at a time unless I have to. If you're getting most of the pictures right in camera, then all you really need is this to just tweak them here and there. You've also got keywording. So I can add a keyword to this picture. And you can type in here whatever keywords you want. and you can, once you've put them in, they start appearing in this matrix. So if I add a bridge here, you'll see now the bridge has come up here as one of my options. So I've now tagged this picture with bridge. I could actually now select all the pictures of bridges and now click on bridge, and now they've all been tagged with that same keyword. So keywording is very easy. Metadata, so what was used to take the picture. So this was actually taken on an iPhone. This particular one here was taken on an iPhone, gives you the resolution and all the metadata that you want. A 4.15mm lens, how about that? So all of that is all pretty standard, and you get it in all different shapes and sizes of software. One other interesting one is right down here is the GPS. If you had used GPS tagging on your phone and or your camera, then the GPS data would be there where you took the picture. So the GPS coordinates of where the photo was taken, and then if you use the map function, it would then place those photos on the world map, and it would give you little pins on the world map where those photos were taken. Now, none of the photos I've got loaded here have got GPS coordinates on, so the map is blank. So that's the photos I've got already catalogued. What about adding more photos? How do you import photos into Lightroom? Well, on the bottom left, you've got an import button. So let me click that. And it now says, please select a source. And it's got a number of sources. These are different drives and sources. But this one called Nikon is actually a memory card that I've got plugged into the system. So I've taken the memory card out of the camera, plugged it into the computer, selected it in the import dialog, and these are the photos that are on that memory card. Now, you'll notice on this memory card that there's two different photo shoots here. And I don't really want to import all the photos into the same place. I'd rather like to split them up. You remember I had bridges, food and rust as my other folders. Maybe I want to import these into two different folders. So you'll see that all the photos at the moment are ticked. And that means that when I import them, they will be imported. So I don't want all of them imported. So I'm going to uncheck them all. There's a button down here to uncheck them. And now I'm just going to click on one at the beginning of this batch and shift and click on the other to select all of them. And now I'm going to just tick one of them, and because they're all selected, they all get checked. So I'm only going to import those. And now if I come over to the top, I've got a few options here. And what's selected at the moment is add. And what that means is that these photos will be added to the catalogue without moving them. Now that's not a lot of good for a memory card from a camera. So what I want to do is I want to copy the pictures from the memory card onto the computer. So I'm going to select copy. If I had move, it would literally move the pictures off the memory card and move them. But that doesn't give me a way of going backwards. If I've moved the pictures and I screw it up, I've actually taken them off the memory card and I can't go backwards. So I normally use copy. That means I can copy the photos from the memory card, make sure everything's hunky-dory, and when I'm sure everything's fine, then I will put the memory card back in the camera and remove the photos in camera. That's the workflow that I use. So I've now selected the photos on the memory card that I want to import. Now I've got to decide where I'm going to put them. So let me take a look at this dialog box over here now. So what am I going to do? Do not import suspected duplicates. So what it will do is it uses the file name
I'm going to ignore you until you
and a few other factors to decide whether you've already imported it or not. This is just a little protection to stop you importing things twice. Are you going to rename the files? No, I don't think I am, so I'm going to uncheck that. But if you have it checked, you can put text in to rename it. Am I going to apply any development settings when I import it? Maybe I know that all the pictures are a little bit underexposed. Someone talking in the background?
In the background.
Shall I'll mute you all, maybe?
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly very exciting work. I've kept up on it.
Someone's chatting in the background. Bear with. I'm going to come out of...
Seriously, how do you plan to accelerate the build-up of the underside?
Sounds like television.
Sounds like a television.
Yeah.
Too, doesn't it?
On the Enterprise, we use harmonic resonators.
Rapid run, it?
Obviously from the same problem.
It's that person in the bottom right, Rapid Ronda.
Real leader will go in there and get things moving. And they are looking for you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes. Delete Rapid Ronda.
Whoever Rapid Ronda is, I've muted you. Okay, let's go back. So what I was saying is that I don't want to rename the files, but I can apply some development settings. So I could do some color, some adjustment, some curve adjustments, lifting the shadows or whatever. There are a few things I could do on import if I wanted to. I tend not to do that. I tend to import it first and then apply the changes. One thing I do quite often do though, is I do apply some metadata to the photos as I import them. And what I've done, if I show you there, I've got a profile that I've already set up. And when I import the photos, you'll see that that will apply some metadata to all the photos as I import them. Now, where am I going to put these? Okay, so we're going to put them with the others, and I won't take you through this individually because it changes from machine to machine to machine. But I want it in pictures, I want it in my photos. So I want to put it in my photos, which is where the bridge, food and rust ones are. But I want to create a new folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up here and say into a subfolder. And then I'm going to give it a name. And we'll call this garden. Because all these photos are in Exbury Gardens. Right, so I've selected the photos. I'm going to apply a little bit of metadata to them. I've chosen the folder where I'm going to put them, not going to rename them or mess with them in any other way. And I'm going to create a new subfolder as I import. So let's go ahead and do that. I get a little progress bar up in the top left as it's doing the import. And it shows you the photos on the screen as it imports them. And if you look over here on the left, current import, it shows you the ones you've just imported. And you'll notice down here, I've now got a folder called Garden that it's created. So it's finished the import. It says there are 18 that is imported. And if you look down in Garden, it says 18 there. So that's all good. If I come down to Garden now, there are my photos. And if I look over on the metadata, remember I selected that Ray Buckland preset here. When I imported them, that applied some copyright information. So I've put a copyright statement in about this photo. Now I want to import some more, the other lot. Let's go back here, and you'll notice that the ones I've already imported are all grayed out. It knows that you've imported those already. It hasn't bothered to check them, but it has checked the ones that you haven't yet imported. So it helps you a little bit there to organize the import process. So if you've got 3 or 4 different photo shoots or locations on the same memory card, this is quite a good way to get stuff into the system without duplicating and without spraying photos everywhere. So again, we'll go through the same process. I'm going to apply Ray Buckland here. This time, although we're not going to go into Garden, let's open this up again. Down into Pictures and My Photos. This time, I want it to go into Light Painting. And you'll see in the folder there, it brings up the new folder in italics in a grey colour. And that's a good visual way to confirm that you've created the right folder name in the right place before you push the button. So let me push the button on that one. And again, we get the dialog box appear up here. And the current import has now cleared, and it's now showing the ones we're importing now. And you'll see that I've got thumbnails across the bottom as well as the grid view up here. And now I've got a folder called Light Painting. And again, my metadata has applied my copyright information. So now that I've got those photos in, what else can I do? Well, I can search through this stuff. So let me go back up to the top pictures, where I've got 114 pictures now. I'm now going to search through these by metadata. I want to search by, there's a date there, or camera, or lens. I can change any one of these. So if I can change the sort that I'm going to apply by selecting these columns, but let me just select the ones I took on this particular camera. So it just shows, out of the 114, it's just showing the 55 that I took on that particular camera. So if you know you took it on a particular date, or you took it on a particular camera, you can very quickly find it by the metadata. And this is without using keywords or anything. This is just using the metadata. On top of that, you can do attributes, keywords, by text, all sorts of ways of searching for these things. You can also then, and this is all very common to other systems, you can now pick things. So let me say this picture here, I particularly like this one. So I can apply down here star ratings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star ratings. Oh, sorry. What I'm doing there is searching. I can actually apply star ratings here to this picture. So I can apply a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star rating to it. And now over here, I can say, only show me the 5-star ratings. So 2 ratings and higher, 3 ratings and higher. Only show me the 4. Yeah. So you can apply these star ratings and then search the catalogue by all those ratings. Another thing I could do with this picture is I could maybe pick it. And what that means is I can say, this is my top pick. Now I can either hit the flag here to do that, or I can hit the P button on the keyboard for pick. And then I can say, show me all the photos out of the 114 that have been picked. And only 1 has been picked so far. So once you've got your photos in the system, you can then start refining and selecting the ones that you really like and you want to work with more. So what I tend to do is I tend to import them all, and then I start going through them one at a time. So I would start with the first one, and I would say, actually, no, that's not a 5-star at all. That's okay. Yeah, neutral, that one, keep going. Okay, oh, I quite like that one. That's quite funky. I'm going to pick that one. Keep going. That's interesting. Oh, that's even better. I'm going to pick that one.
Right.
No, too many people in those pictures. Quite funky. I'll pick that one. So now once I've gone through all my pictures from this particular photo shoot, I can now say, right, show me all the ones that I've picked. And now I do a second pass. And on these two, they're very similar. So I'm going to show them side by side. Which one do I like the best? Well, actually, I like this one the best. So I will unpick the other one. So this particular one here, I'm going to unpick it. So now only that picture is in there. So what you do is, or what I do is I go through and I pick the ones or I apply star ratings, and then I go through a second pass review, and then I refine my choices until I finally narrow down the 3 million pictures or whatever it was I took on that shoot down to the half a dozen or so that I really want to work with. And then once I've narrowed them down to the group that I really want to spend time on, I think are possible candidates for printing, showing at the project vote or whatever. Then I go to work in the develop module over here, and I just work on those ones. So by importing them, categorizing them, refining them down and down and down, I'm then only spending time on the ones that I think are possible candidates for a greater life. A couple of other things to say, and then I'll let you guys ask you questions. Is I can sort this by a number of ways, and what I'll do is I'm going to now change to a different catalogue. So it all shuts down. And so one annoying feature of Lightroom is when you change catalogues, it shuts down Lightroom and relaunches it. So now I've got to reshare it again. So these are all the close-up photos that you submitted. And I can sort these photos by a variety of different ways. So if I come down here, you'll see there are 80 photos because I've got the 3 from Colin in there now, although they weren't included in the vote. If I click on this area here, I can sort this list by, say, capture time. So using the metadata, what time of day was the photo taken, it's now sorted it by that time. I can sort it by the order that I edited it, or whether it's been picked, or whether it's got what the file name is. So this is sorted by file name. I can also sort it by label text. And this is the way, if you were wondering, I actually randomize the sort order on the voting. What I do is I go into every photo and over here, let me move over a little bit, in the metadata area, you'll see that there's a label. And what I've done is I randomized the order of the photos. And the way I did that was I copied all of them. I'll do that now. Copied all of them. And I'm now going to drag them into a quick collection. And what I've done now is all of those photos are now in a collection. But what I can do now is I can mix them up. So I can drag them around. Bear with. If I grab this one, I can move him around. I can move that one around. I can change the order that they're appearing in to an order that is as random as I can make it. And then once I've done that, I go through each one and I go over here and I give it a label number. And I go, literally the order I end up with, I go 1 through to the end. And that's the order and the photo number I use with the voting system. So you can use labels to change the sort order. You can make a slideshow or a random collection using the quick collection tool. You can clear that and then come back to the actual one. And here I've sorted by that label. So this is number 1, this is number 24. Yeah, very powerful sorting and organizing of your photos, no matter where they are on your computer. You're not bound to where you put them and how you sort them and categorize them. It's very powerful. So why don't you guys ask you questions? Any questions, anyone?
Yeah. Ray?
Yeah.
One thing that you should mention is that once you've imported them into Lightroom, if you want to move any photos between folders, you have to do it in Lightroom. Because if you do it on the computer, Lightroom loses track of where they are.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thank you. Let me just go over that again. If I want to, if I wanted to move some of these pictures into a different folder or create a new folder, maybe once I've imported them, there's a bunch of photos that I think maybe I want all the birds, for example, so I've selected those 3 photos. Maybe I want to put those 3 photos into a folder called birds. What I can do is if I come up to here and I right click here, it says, do you want to create a folder inside close-up? And I say, yes, I do. Do you want to include the selected photos? Yes, I do. Let's call it birds and create. What it'll now do is move those 3 photos into a folder called birds. So if I just click on there, those are the 3 photos that I moved. Now it's important that I do that.
No, I don't think it moved them, Ray, because you've still got 80 in the other folder, haven't you? Oh no, you've got.
It's counting them all.
Yeah, I have that turned off. That's what's confusing.
Yeah, no, I understand. So it has physically moved them in the folders. And I did it using Lightroom. Rather than drag and drop the photos within the file manager of your computer, you know, create a new folder called birds and drag the photos around. When you're using Lightroom, it's important to use Lightroom to move the photos around. And that's so that the catalog stays updated. If you don't, then the catalog gets out of synchronization. Now you can resynchronize it and there are ways of doing that, but it can get messy and you can lose track of things if you're not careful. So thanks, Andrew. I would agree with you. Once you've imported these photos, if you then want to move them, if you then want to rename them, if you then want to reorganize them in any way, do it within Lightroom, and then the integrity of your catalog will be maintained. And one other point while we're talking about that, this Lightroom does protect you in that the catalog becomes quite important. When you start doing development and changes, adjustments to your photos, those are not being made to the photos themselves. Those are instructions that are being stored in the catalog. So your catalog becomes a very important tool in managing your photos. So if you lose your catalog or it gets corrupted in any way, you're in trouble. What Lightroom will do periodically when you try and close Lightroom down is it will say, I'm going to back up your catalog for you. And if you don't say yes, it will worry you to death until you do it. And if you're smart, what you'll do is you'll back up that catalog to a different drive so that the catalog backup is somewhere else. And then you're spreading your risk. But the important point to mention here is that Lightroom protects you. It forces you or worries you to death to do backups of the catalog because that's an important tool. Any other questions?
Yeah, you know when you were starring your pictures,
Yep.
marking them up, you know if you press cap locks, it goes automatically to the following picture, so you don't have to keep going through with the arrow.
I didn't know that. Let
No.
me try and do that. Caps lock.
Yeah, you put caps
Okay.
lock on
I'll
Windows.
put caps lock on now. And now I want to star rate. Hello. Oh, let me go to, okay. Caps lock. And if I star rate this, well, so it does.
Yeah.
I just learned something. Thank you. I didn't know that.
Saves you a lot of messing around with keys.
It does, yeah. It saves you swiping around with the mouse or the
You
cursor keys.
can leave it there as long as you like. If you actually give it a star rating or
Yeah.
whatever you're doing with it, then it moves on.
Yeah, no, that's a nice little feature I didn't know about. And there you can see up here, the star rating is displayed. And if I pick one of them, then you get the little flag appear as well. So you know that's flagged as well. Any other questions or comments or tips? Well, look, I hope this wasn't too much. It can be a bit over the top when you hear all this stuff for the first time, but hopefully some of it was vaguely familiar because we have touched on one or two every now and again.
Right.
Yes.
Are all the edits synchronized to all the locations?
Yeah, the edits are kept in the catalogue, and the catalogue spans all the locations. And in fact, although you've seen me flip between a couple of different catalogues today, part of that was for demo purposes. Adobe themselves recommend that you only have one catalogue. There's no capacity limit on how many photos you can have in a single catalogue. And if you have all your photos in a single catalogue, then if you want to search and find stuff, no matter where it is, when you did it, the last time you saw it, what drive it's on, you've only got one catalogue to go to, and the search parameters will scan everything. So they recommend you only have one catalogue. And so to answer your question, yeah, all the edits and changes, crops, rotations, changes in exposure, white balance, anything that you do to the photo is recorded as a set of instructions in the catalogue for that photo.
Right.
You won't see any XMP files or sidecar files or anything like that in a Lightroom catalogue.
Right.
It doesn't create anything like that. It's all in the catalogue files.
You can, if you want, turn on an option so that where your photos are stored, it creates an XMP file so that you can load it into a alternative program and see your edits.
Yeah, you can do that, but what I tend to do is I tend to do it in a slightly different way. Let me just turn on screen sharing again. So if I wanted to edit this picture here, if I right click it, I then get an edit in option, and
Yeah,
I want
that's
to
what I
edit
do.
in Photoshop, and it gives me the option. Do I want to edit the original, or do I want to edit with the Lightroom adjustments? So if you choose that one, you don't need the XMP files. It will take all the changes you've made in Lightroom and apply them to the photo when it opens in Photoshop. And whilst we're talking about that, if I do that, let me do that. And let me make a change to this. I'll now have to share Photoshop.
Yeah, while you're doing that, right? So I import slightly differently to the way you do it. I manually copy the files onto my hard drive and then I just add them to the catalog.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. Yeah.
I just find that easier.
Yeah, the only downside to that, and why I didn't mention it today, is that often you end up with more than one shoot on one memory card. And if you're doing that, you need to know which photos are which shoot if you want to separate them out. If you do it using Lightroom, you've got a visual way of doing that. But 6.5 doesn't go. Can you all see Photoshop now?
Yeah.
Photo with Photoshop. So if I make some kind of adjustment, I don't know, let me rotate it. I'm just going to rotate it just for something to do. So now I've done that. I'm now going to save that Photoshop file. It's now saved it as a PSD file because I've edited it in Photoshop. So let me come out of that and go back into Lightroom now. You'll now see I've got 2 photos in the catalogue. By editing using Lightroom, by doing the edit from the Lightroom path, when you save the picture, it already knows where to put it for you. So it's put it in the same folder where you got the original photo. It's put it side by side. The file name is different. So if you come down to the bottom here, you'll see that this is a Chris Bates photo, because that's what I called it, but it's edit.psd. If I click on the other one, this is just a close-up photo without, and it's a JPEG. So the PSD, and you can see I rotated it, is side by side in the catalogue. Now, what I tend to do, again, this is my personal workflow, is when I do that, if I do use Photoshop to edit a particular photo like this, I don't want to get confused with all the different versions. So what I would tend to do is say, well, this one is my pick, and this one is my pick, but that one is not my pick because that's the JPEG version or the unedited version. I only want the one I've edited and I now favor. So I don't pick the one that is the source file. And sometimes even I reject it. So if I select it and use the X key, you'll see I've now got a little X there, and that says it's a rejected photo. And you'll see that it's faded out now, because this is my prime photo now. I've spent time editing it. That's the one I want to work with. I don't want to get confused about all the different versions I have of the photos that I'm using. And if I now filter down here, I want the unmarked and the marked. You'll see that the rejected photos have disappeared. So I'm not confused by all those rejected ones that I don't want to work with.
And you still got your original raw file.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Sorry, have you still got your original raw file? The raw file.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it was a JPEG I worked on, but it would have been the same if it was a RAW file. If I had edited the RAW file in Photoshop in the same way and done a save, it would have saved it as a PSD alongside the RAW file.
Right.
And again, what I've done in the past is, because I don't want to be confused, I only want to work on the one that I've edited, I will either reject or unpick the RAW file. So I'm only working now with a PSD. And when you export those photos from Lightroom, didn't actually cover that, but just very quickly, I'm aware of the time, guys. I don't want to go on too long. These are my photos now. That's the one I edited. I now want to export them, say there could be a mixture of JPEGs, PSD files, RAW files, TIFF files, could be all sorts of different file formats. They all look the same to you here. They all behave the same. But now I want to export them. Say I want to export these 3 now as my project vote for birds. So I select all 3. I then come down, and instead of using the import button, I now use the export button, and I get a dialog box to say, well, okay, where do you want to put them? Do you want to put them in a subfolder? Do you want to rename them? Do you want to, what do you want to export them at? So like, because I've got a mixture of file formats, I want to export everything as a JPEG. So it's going to convert that PSD file to a JPEG on the fly as it exports it. I don't have to launch Photoshop and do a save as. I can do it from within Lightroom. And here I want to resize it to this size, because this is the size that I would use for the galleries on the website. So I've chosen that. So I can export, it'll do the file conversion for me, rename it for me, and it will put it in a different resizing. I can even apply a little bit of sharpening and add a bit of metadata and even a watermark. I can do all of that as I export the photo from Lightroom. And what I would tend to do is when I export it, I would export it to a separate file on the desktop somewhere, separate folder on the desktop. And then I submit my project vote, or I upload them, or I print them, or do whatever it is, and then I delete them. Because if I need them again, I can always come back into the catalogue and export them again. Rather than clutter my machine up with loads of original source files like these and loads of copies of JPEGs that I've exported, that's just clogging up the system. Rather than do that, I'll export the photos, use them for the purpose why I exported them, whatever that is, and then delete them. If ever I need them, I know they're in my catalogue.
Right. Yeah, very good system.
I'm sold on it, but then I'm a fan, so I would be. But I know some of you use it, some of you don't, and that's fine. But what I've covered and what I've told you about, chances are your software, whatever that is, will do something similar. It may be slightly different, it may be more clunky, it might even be smoother. But this one does it for me. Any other questions? Okay.
I use a
Go ahead.
I use a folder system for my pics. So when I import my pictures, I create a folder called RAW, and as I go through them, I create 2 more folders called Delete and Edit, and I just drag them into the 2 folders. And then as I develop them, any sort of PSD ones or ones where I just edit in Lightroom, I create another folder called Master, and then I move them into that folder. So
Yeah.
I just do it like so. You can adapt Lightroom to however you fancy, really.
Yeah, and a lot of people are more comfortable with working that way, so yes, you can. If you're wondering how much it is, It's, what's the current price now? 10 quid?
£10
Yeah,
a month.
£9.99. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 quid a month.
But you have to be careful when you go to the website because there's now 2 versions you can sign up for.
Yes, this what I've shown you here is called the classic version, and that is the version that runs on your PC in what you would recognize as the traditional way. There is a cloud version. I wouldn't recommend you go down that path personally because it works out very expensive, because however many thousand photos you've got, they are all going to end up on Adobe's cloud, and they start charging you for storage. So the more pictures, the more it costs you. With this way, yes?
You get 1 terabyte with the default subscription.
Yeah.
It's just you don't get Photoshop with it.
Oh, right, you don't. Oh, interesting.
No.
No, I tend to go for the standard photographer's package, which is £10 a month today. And you get Lightroom and full-blown Photoshop with that. And for me, that's the best combination. And then the storage management, disk drives and things is down to me, not down to Adobe. The other thing I would say about that is, let's say tomorrow you decide that you want to change from Adobe to something else, or horror of horrors, Adobe goes into administration or something desperate like that. If you've got all your photos on Adobe's cloud, you're on your own, mate. Whereas if you've got it on your disk drives under your control in the folders that you decided, yes, all your catalog and stuff is tied to Adobe, but with the PC version running, even if Adobe went into administration tomorrow, you know, the software wouldn't stop working tomorrow, whereas on the cloud, it might. But if it's running on your PC, it wouldn't. So you've at least got time to export your catalog and all the adjustments that you've built up over the years before you have to move to something else. So my personal recommendation would be steer clear of the cloud version and go with the PC version for now.
And if you've got the classic version and you decide to cancel your subscription, you can still access all your edited photos and export them and print them. The only thing you can't do anymore is the development module stops working.
Yeah, because every time you load the software, it checks online that you're still paying the 10 quid a month. Yeah, so they get you.
A surprise.
Yeah. But, you know, to be honest, for some, you know, 120 quid a year is a lot of money. But, you know, for others, it's not when you consider it's a worry-free solution. You get 4 or more major upgrades a year on Lightroom and Photoshop. You've always got the latest version. You never have to worry about that. You never have to worry about being obsolete. You've always got the latest version, and for me that is money well spent. And if that means I can't buy an extra bit of camera equipment that year, it's money well spent for me.
I cancelled my subscription, and then 2 months later they got in touch with me and offered it me at £7.99.
Really? Well, that's always worth a go. I did that with Virgin Media and got a heavy discount. So, so yeah, cool. Yeah, it's always worth playing the cards and the competition angle, especially now that there are some real competitors in the market. Affinity is gaining a lot of supporters, and that is a one-off license fee plus upgrades. But that's gaining quite a lot of support, and that always helps to keep Adobe on their toes. So yeah, not a bad thing when it comes to renegotiating costs. Okay, well then I think we're done on Lightroom, done it to death probably. the only other thing to cover, really, I've got two other things. One is, the project vote.
Yeah,
Should we do that?
Yeah.
Then the raffle.
I've kept you on tenterhooks, haven't I, for so long. There you go. So, drum roll, please. Thank you very much. In third place. Oh, bugger, come on. Tracy, congratulations.
Yes. That
What a
was
lovely
mine.
picture.
Yeah.
Beautiful picture. In second place, Paul, congratulations. And in first place, Chris, well done. Well done,
Chris, how long
guys.
did that take to take that shot?
It was taken at Droitwich with a 600mm lens.
I thought you were going to say, how long does it take for the super glue to set on the branch?
Did you have to wait a long time for it?
We were there from 7:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon.
Do you know it's going to land just there?
I didn't.
He put glue.
The modelling place was supposed to be taking kingfishers, but I got dragonfly.
Wow, that's
right.
awesome.
Great shot.
Worth it.
It's a great shot.
All three pictures are amazing. Paul, how did you get yours?
It was
Obi.
in Vietnam or somewhere. These are foreign insects. They're not British, and I think it was from memory. It was in a pool, and I just used my default lens is a 28-300 on a full frame body. So, well, it wouldn't have been. It had been a crop sensor at that time, a D7000, but just zoomed in. And of course, the thing that enabled it to come out quite as sharp, I was quite impressed by how sharp it was the light. The light was absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And you know, you struggle if the light's not spot on. You do struggle. And you can see there in the shadows that I'm guessing it was probably round about midday with the light coming straight down on it. But, it was just, you know, people say, "Oh, I did this, I did that," but most of the time, a lot of it is luck, isn't it? Let's be honest. Let's be honest about this.
But it's luck. It's luck with a bit of skill mixed in.
Yeah, okay, I accept that. But that shot of Chris, if you zoom in on it, I know it's, and if you really zoom in and see how sharp it is fantastic. Absolutely. In fact, I picked that out as my winner. I voted for that.
There were some fabulous pictures this time, don't you think? Some really.
These three pictures were clear winners. And Tracy, we were talking about, Paul was talking about light. I love the light on this. How did you get that?
The flash.
Tracy, are you there?
I don't think so.
Gone home.
Yeah.
You don't come with embarrassment.
Maybe we lost her. But anyway, I think, the light on that one, I think, is lovely. Well done, everyone. And the certificates are done. I'll send them out to you tonight or tomorrow. And I'll update the gallery with all your names. Next one, symmetry. Whatever interpretation that is.
They're getting fuller, aren't they?
Well, I think actually one thing I was going to suggest to the committee is that we need to double check that the project vote categories lend themselves to lockdown, because there's no point having a category that, you know, landscapes, for example, if you can't get out and take them.
Crowds. Groups of people, yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't done that yet, but I think it's worth a quick eyeball over the categories. We may need to juggle the categories just to, you know, navigate our way around the current restrictions. But symmetry works. You can obviously, in the garden or in the house, I'm sure you can come up with something creative. Submissions by 22nd, please. And then I'll open the voting on the Monday, as we did this time. Submissions on the Friday night. I'll open the voting on the Monday and close them at midday on the Wednesday. So you get 2.5 days to submit your vote. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Let me stop that. So that's it. We went over the hour today.
Very good, Ray.
Tracy is there. She's not
Very
talking
good.
to us.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, I would appreciate your feedback, perhaps, you know, offline if you wish. Tracy, you're back. You didn't comment on your photo. I can't hear you. Never mind.
Get your earplugs in.
But I would appreciate your feedback on the content and the level. I mean, we've done Lightroom now from a couple of different angles. I don't know what else you might want to cover. Let me know.
Ray,
Yes.
I was getting really frustrated the other day trying to put backgrounds into pictures, and I could not for the life of me remember how to do it.
The cutouts.
Is that what it's called? And collages, they were driving me nuts. I did it in PowerPoint in the end, as you probably saw on Facebook the other day.
Collages are fun, and as you know, I do the big print that we do once a year, the hidden Thatcham and all the other things that we've done in the past, and it takes a lot of time to get it millimeter perfect. So there's quite a skill involved, and the only way to do that is to actually do it. So I'm more than happy to talk you through that if you want to do that. But maybe of wider interest would be doing a cutout in Photoshop. Let me know, would you? Just drop me an email and just say, would that be of interest? And then if we get enough people saying yes, then I'll do that. Or if you've got a different idea, let me know. Because I think we're probably done with Lightroom now. Yes, Paul.
Is Picasa still available as a free download?
I believe it is.
Yeah, in Picasa, there is a very, very, very handy and simple collage maker. And you just bung the images on the left-hand side, and you can select different layouts like tiled, mosaic, you know, the one where they're just slapped on at jaunty angles, and you can completely edit it, and it's very, very intuitive and simple. It's probably the easiest.
I don't think that's being supported anymore, is it?
No, it isn't.
Try doing that.
I know Google have withdrawn support for it, but I would imagine you can still download it.
I think the issue was I had about 16 images, so when I was trying to do it in Photoshop, it only takes about 4, and it was honestly, in the end I gave up and just did it all in PowerPoint. And then I didn't know, but PowerPoint will convert it to a JPEG, and I was like, oh, happy days.
So were you trying?
It also downsizes it as well. When you put it into PowerPoint, the image quality gets downsized. So if you're printing, you're okay up to about A4, but any bigger than A4.
It was only for Facebook, Ray. It was fine on Facebook.
Then that's fine. Yeah.
If you were trying to just put them out on a page, so sort of your images down a page, you can do that in the print module in Lightroom, and then just export it to a JPEG.
I've never used Lightroom, so.
Yeah.
I've never used Lightroom.
Okay. Right. Well, it's not for the faint-hearted, but actually the photo book module is actually quite good. It does have a number of layouts, and it's plugged into a provider for actually printing the books as well. I don't think it's the cheapest in the world, but it is professional level quality. But there is a way of laying it all out in Lightroom, and then pretty much a one click it goes off and gets printed for you.
Yeah, cool. And, Angela, if you're really into sky replacements, you should look at a program called Luminar 4.
Okay.
So it's a competitor to Lightroom, and one of the big upgrades they've done in the latest version is an AI sky replacement tool.
I sent Angela full details on that.
Ah, right.
Didn't I, Angela?
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
Well, actually, I think we should use Zoom
Shooting
because
stars.
the virtual background is pretty damn good at
Yeah.
cutting out all the crap behind me.
And I've watched videos on it, and you just get your image, you just load in the sky, and it just does it seamlessly.
They used to say a camera never lies, but isn't that the biggest lie ever these days, eh?
The Luminar 4 is worth buying. It's about 70 quid. It's worth buying just for the sky replacement. It's fantastic. And what you can do, you can go out and take photographs of sky, and then when you get a perfectly exposed image and the sky is completely grey, you just go in and you can drop in your own images of the sky, and it does it automatically. And it is so good, so good.
I'll tell you what I've started to do now with the sky is that when it's a high contrast image, I take 2 shots, one exposing for the foreground and one exposing for the sky. And then if you are going to do a cutout, you've got the same sky in the same location at the same time, but correctly exposed.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a couple of seconds to shoot the second photo, but it can dig you out of a hole.
Just bracket the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we could cover, Ray, isn't it, on this bracketing?
Yeah.
Bracketing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, and HDR. I've got Photomatics, which is a very good HDR package where you don't even have to do bracketing. You just take one raw picture, and then Photomatics does 2 pictures underexposed, 2 pictures overexposed, and the one in the middle. You've now got 5 shots from one photo. And that's very handy because if you're taking 5 shots and bracketing and there's movement, you're buggered. So if there's a person in the picture or a cow turns its head around, anything like that, you can't use the picture because you get blurring going on. Whereas if you take one picture and then use HDR, something like Photomatics Pro to HDR it, you can HDR pictures with people in or animals or moving trees, wind blowing leaves. All those can give you problems doing HDR when you're bracketing.
So the company that do Luminar will do a program called Aurora, and that's an HDR program, which is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well look, drop me your comments about that, and then I will pick the most comments and we'll do something next time round. And I promise it's not Lightroom. We won't do Lightroom.
Luminosity masks in Photoshop.
Say what?
Luminosity masks in Photoshop.
Yeah, we'll do any
There's a
suggestion
shortage of
apart
them.
from Andrew's. Yeah.
There's a big shortage of them.
So now, before you all log off, can you just drop your name in the chat module for me, please, as an attendee list?
Where is it?
Down the bottom.
At the bottom of the chat.
What? Not on an
There's a hand
iPad.
down the light bulb, it's all right.
Oh,
On
yeah,
an
on the light
iPad,
bulb.
I think you've got to touch somewhere on the grid and it pops up.
Down the bottom. Down the bottom. There's chat.
Down the bottom it says chat.
I think on the
what's
iPad
that
it's on the
then?
side or something. It's not
Yeah.
on the bottom.
There's a bar there.
So what are we supposed to do? Yeah, I've clicked on it and I got it up. Yeah.
Well, then
What do I
type
do
your
now?
name in where it
Type
says
your
type
name in,
message
Pete.
here.
Just type your
Type.
name, enter.
Type your name at the bottom right.
Oh, I got it.
Well done.
Do it to everybody.
Yeah, Pete, your name was Pete.
You can either do it
It's actually Peter.
right.
I have you know.
Oh, Peter.
Hey. There you go. We got to do this every time.
For the moment, I can't find a better way of doing it.
That's hard work.
Yes, you.
Yeah.
When did Malcolm sign in on
Mine
everybody? When did
Yeah.
Malcolm get knighted?
I still haven't found the backdrop thing that you will muck about with yet.
I'm be a bit worried about what you're going to put on there, Pete.
We'll
anyway.
find you one, mate. We'll find you a backdrop.
Just
White curtains, or is that your hair?
Oh yeah, if anybody's got any hairdressing tips, I mean seriously, look, the hairdressers aren't going to be open for 6 months. Seriously, that's not going to work.
Alan, not you.
I know exactly who you're talking to, mate.
6 months, the hairdressers. 6 months.
Might get me a purple rinse. Because I'm worth it.
Look at Pete.
Okay, guys, thanks ever so much.
Bye.
See you all next week.
Bye. Bye. Take care, all.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.